Welcome everybody to the second webinar in our Copilot webinar series. NetGain would like to welcome Walker Rowe from PAX 8 back to our Copilot webinar series. Walker is a Microsoft certified subject matter expert who graduated from the University of Colorado Boulder. We've also got our very own Noah Pfister here to show some demonstrations about how Copilot can increase productivity and streamline your operations. Noah is NetGain's manager of remote monitoring, management, and team automation. In this webinar, we will spend some time on demonstrations and show real applications of Copilot being an executive assistant. We will also have time for questions, so please submit your questions in the question box throughout the webinar. And let's get started. Noah, I'm going to turn over the controls to you.
Sure. Thanks, Ashley. Hi, everyone. Noah Pfister, like Ashley introduced me earlier. I'm going to show you a few things that Copilot is capable of doing within a few different Microsoft Office applications. After I show you a few, Walker's going to take over and show the other half for you. If at any point you have any questions, of course, please leave them in the chat for us, and we're happy to get to those for you. Maybe towards the end of the presentation, or maybe if it's something that we can demonstrate in real time, then we might be able to do that. So the core focus of today is going to be showing how you can use Copilot AI as a kind of form of executive assistant. Copilot is not going to be something that completely replaces a job, replaces a role or an employee, but it is certainly something that's going to help you do kind of those tedious tasks that have to be done, but might take, little pieces of your time each day can add up to a lot of time that you could be spent doing other things. So I'm going to share my screen here real quick, and we're going to start with Microsoft Word. All right. So you all should be able to see my screen now. And what I'm going to do here is when Word opens, you're immediately going to get this draft with Copilot box that appears. And in here, excuse me, it's going to say, describe what you'd like to write, including notes or an outline, and Copilot can generate a draft to help get you started. Now, this is just like any other large language model. We could have it completely generate fake data in here. And what I mean by that is I could say, create fake meeting notes for a company called Acme Consumer Inc. Regarding the construction of a new factory in New Mexico. Include those who attended, an agenda, and some to-dos at the bottom. And then I'm just going to say generate. So Copilot is going to go, it's going to take all of the data that it knows about New Mexico, construction about plants, about factories, and it's going to actually construct a document based around the prompt that I just put in here. So we're just going to give it a second to create that prompt, and I could even give it some more things to generate that prompt. I could have said, hey, at a minimum, I need this document to be 2 pages, or I need one of the attendees to be Wile E. Coyote. So right here, excuse me, I'm choked up. Right in front of us, we can watch Copilot create the document as if it was typing right here. So again, we just need to give it a little bit of time to create that document, and you don't even have to have Word open while you're waiting for this to occur. Generating fake meeting notes is probably not something that you're going to be doing in your day-to-day, but what I'm about to show you, what we do with this fake document, you very likely would do in your day-to-day. So let's say there was somebody at the meeting taking notes, and they've got this document. We're going to keep this draft for right now. This document, this is great. This tells us exactly what it is that we need to know, but there's a few things about it that we could change. We could make it longer. We could make it more concise. One of the great things that Copilot is able to do for you, and this is across all of the Copilot suite for just about any application is it can take all of the data in this document and summarize it for us. Now, obviously, there's already a summary. Whoever was taking the meeting notes did that for us, but we need to condense it even further, something that we could put into a singular paragraph. So I'm just going to hit this Copilot button in the top right corner, and Copilot knows everything about this document. It's able to see the contents of it. So what I can say is I don't even have to type in anything here. I could just click on this button. These are some suggestions that you'll get at the bottom of the document. And it just says summarize the stock. So I'm going to do that here. Just looking the document over. And again, this is all happening in real time. So it is going to take a couple of seconds for it to actually parse the data in the document and come up with a conclusion. Well, it was giving a summary and then it just decided to stop. So let's try that one more time. Let's say in one paragraph. There is a such thing called a demo curse, which is you practice something, preparing for like a demonstration, and then all of a sudden during the demonstration it just decides it's not going to work. We
See,
might
I
have seen
was
it.
I was thinking Copilot was worried about a Warner Brothers copyright strike or something.
They are pretty litigious. That probably could have been the case. But yeah, you can see right here, even with the summary included in the document, it was able to come up with something that we could probably just copy and paste into maybe a Teams chat, into an email and Outlook, anything right there. And it even gives follow-up prompts. So make the summary shorter, or maybe, hey, expand on that. Let's say that we wanted some specific information about one part of the document. Well, rather than going through the document ourselves, let's say this was 30 pages long. Well, instead of going through here and maybe having to do Control F and finding keywords, you didn't take these notes, or maybe you did take the notes, but it's 30 pages long. Who's going to remember all of that? You could just say in here, what are the key points regarding price when it comes to the new construction? Copilot will parse through the data again and spit out the information that you're looking for. So in this case, it should, I think I saw in here, project on track with an allocated budget of 50 million. So it should give us an answer about that. According to the document, the key point regarding the price of the new construction is that the project is on track and within an allocated budget of 50 million. So Copilot for Word is capable of some pretty strong stuff. I showed off in the first webinar that it's able to directly alter the document as well, and I can show that off here. So let's say these action items right here. I'm going to highlight these action items, kind of these to-dos, and I'm going to click on this Copilot button that shows up in the bottom left corner. I'm going to say rewrite with Copilot. So it's going to take, oh, sorry, it doesn't like bullet points. So I'm going to actually remove these bullet points real quick from this to-do list. There are some limitations of Copilot. Microsoft is updating it all of the time, but in this case, it's not able to manipulate data to say that is very formatted. So I just removed the bullet points, and I'm going to say, hey, rewrite these action items for me, Copilot. And here it is. They are the same thing, and I would always suggest that you read over what was the original content and the revised statement from Copilot. But it should be the same thing, just worded in a different way. And the great part too is that Copilot gives us multiple options for the rewrite. You can click up here, you can see 1 out of 3, 2 out of 3, 3 out of 3, and we can choose which one that we like. We even have more options here. We can adjust the tone of the rewrite. So right now it's in a neutral tone, but let's say we wanted it to be in a professional tone. All we have to do is click professional and regenerate. And you can keep altering the output that it gives. So here it's given us 2 drafts, so we could pick from this one. This is already pretty professional. You can do some pretty goofy stuff if you keep adjusting the tone of what it is that you're working with. So we could say that we want it to be even more professional and regenerate that. You can see the same thing in Teams. Walker's going to demonstrate that in a little while. So all we have to do is, if we like this, we'll say replace, and it directly alters the document right in front of us. So that was just some demonstrations of what Copilot is capable of doing within Teams. The summarization is really key. That is a big part of what Word documents can be many, many pages long, and maybe we just need the top 5 key points from each one of them. And so Copilot is very capable of doing that for us. I'm actually going to take the output of what we got here, and I am going to paste that into a OneNote document. OneNote, also a very popular tool for doing meeting notes. And let's actually get rid of the action items part. Let's say that we didn't have somebody who was creating to-dos for this meeting. Well, you can see in the top right corner, we also have the Copilot button, just like in Word. Here it is. And we can do the same kinds of stuff in OneNote that we did in OneNote that we did in Word. We can ask it to summarize the document. We could ask it to create a list of to-dos. Or OneNote has some pretty cool functionality. We can actually just highlight everything that we want Copilot to interact with, right-click on it, and there are summarize, to-do, and rewrite buttons. So let's go ahead and hit the to-do button here. You can see it's extracting a to-do list. And at the very top of the document, we could just move this to the bottom if we wanted to. It has created a list of items and who should be responsible for them. So Anna needs to take care of handling the environmental and regulatory issues, for example. Sam Brown needs to oversee the engineering and construction of the factory, for example. And again, we can come over here. We can ask it questions. What are some concerns that we should have when doing industrial construction in New Mexico? This isn't information that is currently in the document, but Copilot has a large data set of information. And so it's actually going to be able to give you some information, maybe some things that you need to be concerned about with a project like this. And we could actually insert that content into our document once we've confirmed the validity and the sources. So, and it says right here, this response isn't based on the current section. That's okay. It's got a large amount of knowledge that it's now giving to us. Realize I'm moving along here pretty quick, guys, but it's just because we've got a limited amount of time, and we want to be able to show you kind of a little bit of something from every application. So next, I want to show you a little bit about Outlook, and that's going to require me to stop sharing my screen and reshare it real quick. So I will stop sharing and then share a different window here. All right. So this is in the new Outlook. I'm not sure if you're using still the old Outlook or the new Outlook. New Outlook is the only way that you are able to use Copilot within Outlook. Old Outlook does not support Copilot at this time, at least. And all I did was I started a new email draft. Copilot for Outlook is very similar to Copilot for Word, for example. So we have the Copilot button up here. And we have 2 options this time. We have Draft with Copilot and Coaching by Copilot. So I'm going to start out with Draft for Copilot. And by default, it's going to put what you already have in the email in the draft. But let's say at NetGame, we're going to have a function, write an email about a group event we're having at Collins Bowling on, say, April 14th at 3 p.m. Um, all expenses are paid for and family members are welcome. This is a team building event for everyone. And let's give it some tone indicators as well. Tone should be friendly, and the who, what, when, and where should be prefixed by an appropriate emoji. I don't know, right? Then we can click on this bottom down here button down here for generation um, options. Sorry, I forgot the word for options for a second there. We can say what kind of tone it should be. So rather than saying it in the prompt, you could just say, hey, it's casual, hey, it's formal, or you could make it a poem. And then you can actually say what the length of that message should be. So I'm going to say it should be a medium length message, and we're going to say generate. And this is going to be true for all uses of Copilot, no matter what app you're using it in. The more information you give in the prompt, the better the output is going to be. The more original content that you can feed it, the less potential there is of it giving incorrect information, ultimately. So, pretty quickly, it's created a draft here. Hello, team. I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your work. I have some exciting news to share with you. We are having a group event next week, and here are the details. So, just like I asked it to, it's giving the who, what, when, and where with emojis as a prefix, and it's saying what the event is for, all the expenses are paid for, and just bring your enthusiasm and your bowling skills. Cheers, Noah. If we want to keep that, all we have to do is say keep it. If we want to regenerate it, say we're not kind of happy with the exact way that it worded this, we could say regenerate, or we could give it something in particular to change. So we could say, for example, the address is 129 Main Street, downtown. And it's going to regenerate that draft, and it might even word it differently, but now it's going to take what I gave it and input it into that output now. So we'll wait just a second. And it did not update the address. But that's the thing. Copilot, again, large language model. Sometimes you're going to have to feed it words in a specific way to get it to do what you want. And so it's going to require that you be maybe a little bit creative with your prompt, or maybe you just have to go in here and edit yourself. And like I said earlier, AI, it's a great tool, but it's not always perfect. And so you might have to make sure, you might have to go through and edit just little parts of it to make it correct or to make it sound human. Um, I hope you're all doing well and enjoying your work. At least me, that doesn't sound like me. So I might go in there and I might reword it just a little bit. But the great part is that Copilot has formatted an email for us. It's given the key points, and now we don't have to do that ourselves. I'm going to stop sharing my screen again to share another function of Copilot. Let me pull up an email from Ashley here. And this is actually just an email about the Copilot webinar that we're having today.
Yeah, one thing I was going to say while Noah is pulling that up is what you have to keep in mind on the Copilot product in any generative AI is that the results that it's going to give out still need to be vetted and ran through a human being. And so we talk a little bit about this being an efficiency play and a kind of an executive assistant that you can start working into your day-to-day workflows, but it's never going to fully replace a person. And there will be errors and there will be occasional formatting idiosyncrasies. And so it is important, like Noah mentioned, to have eyes on it and to do the manual review and edits yourself.
So last thing that I want to show real quick is any incoming emails that you get, Copilot has the ability to summarize those emails just at the click of a button. So I'm just going to hit this button that says summarize this email, and Outlook, Copilot for Outlook is actually going to give who is doing what, the event details with it says, hey, she gave a registration link and a registration list. And then if say it's a chain email, there's multiple replies, it will actually summarize those replies to that email as well. So let's say you happen to get into an email chain once there's already 30 replies. Well, you could read every single reply to that email chain, or you could just have Copilot help summarize it so that you could get into the action a little bit faster, quicker. Time goes by so fast, everybody. I want to make sure that we have time to show off a lot of the other things as well. So I'm going to share a different screen now, and I'm going to have Walker go through a few different applications and Copilot's ability in them. Walker, I
Yes,
will leave it to you.
sounds good. And I hope you guys bear with us a little bit. We're using GoToMeeting here. It's my first real foray into that. But if we're talking a little bit about the different products within the Copilot ecosystem, one of the ones that we're going to mention in typical day-to-day operations is Excel. A lot of people work out of Excel. It's a pretty common, part of our day-to-day operations. And if you're like me, it's a weak point. Some people are wired to be really good at Excel. Before we started this meeting today, Noah and I were talking about, he's got a guru over there named Jesse. Fantastic, fun to watch him work. I have a guy from like 8 years ago that I still remember his name, Marco Romagnoli, and he was also fantastic at Excel. The cool thing about Copilot is it's like having one of those people always with you, ready to go at your fingertips. And when you're dealing with large language model and generative AI and large data sets, the real advantage, in my opinion, is the ability to extract information and come up with ways to manipulate the data that are not super technically challenging. You basically just have to ideate what it is that you're trying to accomplish, and then you type it into the prompt within the Copilot interface, and then it's going to spit that back out for you. So as an example here, we have this Excel document pulled up. This Excel document is some sample data that Noah and I populated, and then you can see that it has a couple of different columns here to describe the segment of the companies that are listed in here, the products that they're selling, discount bands, units sold, manufactured units, sales price, gross sales, discount sales, cost of goods sold, profit, date, month number, month name. So this is a pretty reflective or typically reflective data set for something and a company who's tracking their performance over a lifetime. And so you can see here, because there's a differentiation on year and products, you can ask it a question like what I did up here, which is, please tell me which product is the best lifetime performance and provide the total profit. And so what you can see here is it found me the Paseo product. It said that the Paseo product is the best performer over all of the years. And the total sum of profit for them is $4,797,437.95. So very specific. What's nice about this is instead of me having to go through and apply a bunch of filters and manipulate the data, I could just query it, like I said, a plain text English question, which is tell me who did the best, and then it's going to spit that out for me. Now you could see that once it generates a response, like Noah was demonstrating in some of the other applications, and this is true in Excel as well, it's going to give me a couple of prompts or suggestions for things that it thinks I should do next with it. But if I were to say, let's draft, please draft me an email to the producer of Paseo, or of product Paseo, I think is what we should probably say. So we want to be as specific as possible. Asking for a steeper discount, mention the exceptional performance of their product, and explain the upward growth trajectory over the last, let's say 7 years, because this does go back to 2014. So this is an example, and I wanted to show you this because it's something that is pulling data out of Excel. But what we're doing with that data now is we're trying to turn it into an actionable item. So for example, we're sitting down, we're looking at this and we're saying, okay, we know that Paseo is a product in this example that's performing very well. It's got the highest profit across any of the other products. And so we're going to ask for a steeper discount because we're selling more volume. This is a decision that you would make as a company owner or somebody who's in operations. And then you would want to relay that information back to the producer of that product to communicate that, hey, we're looking for, in this case, a discount. So once I hit send here, it's going to be thinking, and it's going to understand the data, and it's going to run through and it's going to generate a response. So what I'm hoping is, as we're all watching this together and running through it together, we start thinking about ways to apply this in our day-to-day, and hopefully we get some good questions out of y'all as far as, will this work for that? And, you start percolating a little bit of the ideation of how to actually apply and start utilizing this product. So I wanted to read this too because I think it's really interesting. So here's the draft that it produced. It said, request for a steeper discount on Paseo product. It doesn't have the producer name, so this is something that is not in the data set. Therefore, we as the person operating the Copilot product need to fill in that information. And then it says, I hope this email finds you well. I'm cuts right to the chase. Request a steeper discount on the Paseo product. Take the opportunity to commend you on the exceptional performance of this product over the last 7 years. We've seen an upward growth trajectory in sales and profitability. Paseo has consistently been one of our best performing products with a total profit of blah, 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 blah. And so let's say, for example, we don't really want to tell them what the profit is. So we're going to say, so please rewrite that email and omit the profit number. Keep things general but positive. Because perhaps we don't want them to know how profitable we are on their product, as an example, right? And so here we go. So what you can see is it's omitted the actual number, but the content is still the same. Now, if we wanted to, we've already kind of demonstrated this a little bit, but I want to show you too, as an example, if anybody has like a specific piece of information they'd be curious in. So let's look at, we probably want to know total units sold. So we could do a sum total. If you guys, have played around with Excel, we can just come down here and do a formula and auto sum it. But the other thing that we could do is ask it a little bit more of a complex question. So please tell me the total number of units sold, starting with the least profit, number of units sold by product, starting with the least profitable products at the top of the list and most profitable products at the bottom of the list. So that would be like what, 2 or 3 formulas in Excel to get that, and probably a pivot table as well. But here with Copilot product, you can just ask it to give you that information, and then here it's going to tell you exactly what's going on. Here's a preview, so it's still working on it. But you can see, for example, the profitability is taken into account, and the sum of units sold is also taken into account. So if we want to copy that out, we can export it. We can even add it to a new sheet. So here, I'll show you guys that. So now sheet number 2 has all of the products listed. As you can see in our previous example, Paseo was the most profitable product. And because we asked it to sort it by profitability and include the sum of units sold, it created this nice little table for us. Paseo is indeed at the bottom, so we know that that's accurate. And then if you ever wanted to go back and manipulate this data, now you can work out of this sheet. So it's really quite a powerful tool in the sense that you don't have to be an exceptionally strong user of any of the applications within the Microsoft ecosystem in order to get the most utility out of the product and to query the data and get the responses back that are going to be helpful to make business decisions. I don't know, Noah, is there anything else that you think would be really interesting to see in Excel? And I'm just kind of opening this up a little bit. If not, we were going to move on to PowerPoint.
Well, one thing that Copilot as a whole, and I usually use Copilot Chat for this, although I would imagine it's probably capable of doing it within Excel as well, is you can actually ask Copilot to assist you with formulas. We were
Yes.
talking before the webinar about how bad I am at writing Excel formulas. Copilot is very capable of doing that, and you can finally put it into words rather than a lengthy formula. So yeah, for example, Walker here is going to do a prompt asking Excel to do a VLOOKUP. How many people here need to do about 15 Google searches before they're able to run one successful VLOOKUP? I'm raising
Yeah,
my hand.
definitely me. Yeah, definitely me.
Yeah. Copilot is great at taking just prompted words and turning that into actual things that you can use within your Excel worksheet. So we're going to see if it's capable of doing that here. And like I said, I know it's capable of doing it within Copilot Chat. Um, let's see if it's capable of doing it within Excel directly.
Yeah. And keep in mind, this is one thing that I did see a question come through on. The Copilot product is a subset, kind of an umbrella term of different products. And if you guys were on the last webinar, then you noticed that we kind of talked a little bit about the free version browser. And then we also talked about the version that's specific to company data, to the tenancy, to the Dataverse, and that's the Copilot for Microsoft 365. If you have Copilot for Microsoft 365, this little piece that we have pulled up right here in the Excel document itself, it is still capable of pulling information from the web. And where it's going to go to find that information is dependent on the prompts. So if you ask it a very generic question, like write me a VLOOKUP formula, what it's going to go do is it's going to go look on the internet and Microsoft's KB articles, and it's going to say, okay, here's the format for VLOOKUP. And then what it's going to do is take into account the prompt that you put in and the specific information that you're asking for. And then it's going to tailor that VLOOKUP formula template and give you something that's actually going to be relevant to what we're doing here. So as an example, we can see VLOOKUP segment 1, segments right here, through to segment. It's going to give me profit, return row 12 or column 12, and false. So we want an exact match. And if I could ask it, I just know this from doing VLOOKUP formulas, and I'm going to ask it, what does each of the inputs mean in that VLOOKUP formula?
Yeah, I got to be honest. You reading off that VLOOKUP formula and knowing what each part of it meant, that's past me as well. So
Muscle memory, yeah. I've had to Google it, and I still do multiple times. And I will not say that I'm a whiz by any means, and that is why, it does take me like 30, 45 minutes. All right, so here it's going to explain it for me. The VLOOKUP formula has 4 inputs. First input is the value you want to look up in this case, and it even is specific. In this case, the value in the segment column of the current row. The second input is the range of cells where the value should be searched for. In this case, the range from the segment column to the profit column. So it's going from segment to profit over to here. The fourth input is a logical value that specifies whether it should be an exact match or an approximate match. In this case, and so this is specific to the formula that it generated for us, the value is set to false, which means that an exact match must be found. So if you're ever confused about, or like me, you want some clarification or kind of a breakdown of what this means, because this is gobbledygook for most people, myself included, it will actually give you a plain text version that is tailored and specific to the formula that you asked it to write. So I think that's really quite impressive, and it's kind of that next step up from anything we've seen in the marketplace. And just to reiterate, because we did talk about this a lot on the last one, but we really haven't touched on it today's call. The Copilot product does do a really good job of segmenting, controlling, and containing company data for any requests, so prompts that you put into it, and any output that it generates. All of this is done on the Microsoft backend by putting it behind the gatekeeper of Entra ID for identity management and conditional access. And what that means for you guys logistically is that if you're signed in with your work account, you're using your Microsoft 365 set of credentials and you're accessing the Copilot product, you are protected. Your data is protected. Anything that you put in there is not going to be viewed by people. It's not going to be even saved like some of the other OpenAI products that are out there, like ChatGPT, for example, which is the backbone of this product, but with data controls that are put in place by Microsoft. And so just wanted to stress that little bit of information that anything you put in here is going to be siloed and segmented and specific to you. It's going to just be a one-to-one, and it doesn't save those outputs either. So if you do want something out of Copilot, it is important to make sure that you export, save, and remove that information from this, because after a certain amount of time, it will time out. And once it times out, all of your responses and outputs are going to be deleted.
I do want to make sure that we have time to get to some questions. There's so many questions around Copilot because it's such a new product. So I think we should switch over to that now.
Okay. Yeah, and then let me just show you just
Okay.
very quickly. So please, I want to show you the PowerPoint, please. So please generate a PowerPoint presentation based on the information in this Excel workbook. The audience is private equity investors. Just because I think that this is really another piece that's really helpful. You don't have to necessarily be in the application that you're trying to work out of, because the Copilot product follows the user and not necessarily the thing. There is an ability to kind of transpose across different services. In this case, demo curse, it's not doing it for me. But the way to do it properly would actually be to go into the PowerPoint presentation, and then you can have it pull this data to generate that PowerPoint presentation. So two different ways to do it. I guess this piece right here is still in beta. As you can see, it's still in preview. So expect to see more things fleshed out as they continue to move through and update the product. And then Ashley, is that a good stopping point? Should we go to questions?
Yeah, I was just going to add to that. I think it's really exciting that they're continuously improving Copilot and adding new features all the time. So I'm sure they'll come out with more too. I think it's really an exciting tool. We had a lot of questions around like security and how to just restrict internal private data from being released. Can you just speak a little bit on, I guess, Microsoft's security policies and what they have in
Sure.
place to combat this?
All right. Yeah, absolutely. It's a great question. So the first thing that you need that would be good to know about the Copilot product is that because it's built on company data and it pulls from documents and resources, there's inherently going to be concerns about privacy and security. Microsoft has taken that upon themselves. And so what I want to stress here is that from the user perspective, the only thing that you really need to do as an action item is to make sure that you have the prerequisite licensing for all of the data security and controls that you can put in place and should. And I'll explain why that's important. It really has to do with the fact that the Copilot product inherently doesn't create security vulnerabilities in an ecosystem and an environment. But what it can do is it can expose existing vulnerabilities. And I'll give you guys just an example. So if there's a company out there, we'll call it Acme Corporation. And Acme Corporation has a typical corporate structure. They have a couple of different departments like sales and HR and C staff. and accounting. Let's say that all of those departments have their own SharePoint sites so that they can collaborate and share files with each other. Those SharePoint sites exist on the tenancy, and they don't have, let's say they're using business standard licensing as an example. So they have the apps and they have all the services. They don't have, or you wouldn't have in this scenario, the data loss prevention product, which allows for sensitivity labels and policies. And so what that can lead into is a situation in which these SharePoint sites are just available and open to anybody within the organization. Because we don't have any security groups in place, we're not doing anything on the document specific level to make sure that this is internal only, or maybe do not forward, do not print rules applied to it. You could then give somebody a Copilot license in sales, and now all of a sudden they ask it to pull payroll information. It's going to go through and it's already semantically indexed all of the documents that say payroll on it. It's going to say, here you go. Because we haven't gone through and we haven't set up any of the security policies at the company level. So that's really where the focus on security comes from with the Copilot product. Anything that's interfacing or hosted or facilitated by Microsoft directly, they've handled all the back end to make sure that that data is locked down and protected. Where we can get ourselves into trouble with the Copilot product is the more specific company data that's going to be contained and accessible to other people within the organization. So that's really what we want to be cognizant of in the context of Copilot security. What Microsoft does on the back end is they have your identity management conditional access component. So your user account, you just think about that in terms of your email address and password, right? That signs in and that's raising your hand and telling your Microsoft, hey, I am who I say I am. And then once you're signed in, all of your applications, all of your files, and now the Copilot product are all going to be available to you. And so from there, Microsoft has on the back end architected a way to silo and segment and protect that information and make sure that it doesn't go out into the World Wide Web. But that is different than other products that are in the marketplace, because if you ask ChatGPT, for example, a question, even if you pay for the corporate version of it, not Copilot, it is going to save those responses and use it for things like log analytics and R&D on the tool itself. So it's going to say a lot of people asked about PAX 8 earnings as an example. So you really don't necessarily want that information out there. We're not a publicly traded company, right?
Mm-hmm.
So these are real world examples of like why you would want to choose the Copilot product over another product, is really the data protection that Microsoft puts in place on the back end.
Thank you, Walker. I'm gonna go to this question because I think this is very interesting, and I believe this is something that I've spoken about with the two of you in regards to teams. Does everyone in a meeting need to have the Office 365 Copilot subscription in order to utilize the follow meeting feature? Can Copilot summarize a meeting that has a combination of remote and in-person attendees? So can Copilot summarize what is said by those who are in person?
It's a two-part question there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, on the first thing where who needs to have a license, basically the meeting organizer needs to have the license. That's the important person in the equation. The attendees do not have to have anything specific.
Okay.
And then as far as the summarization goes, it's a combination of Teams Premium, which is another product, and Copilot to get those meeting summaries, recaps, and live transcription by speaker. So the answer is yes, but you also need to have Teams Premium in place if you want to do that. So what I would say is strategic licensing is important. We all think about how do we get the most value out of these services and these products. So if you're looking at it from a decision maker's point of view, who do I actually give the licenses to? You want to focus on people who are hosting a lot of meetings. So these are going to be like organization leaders.
Mm-hmm.
They should get a license for Teams Premium and Copilot. And then the other people, as needed, depending on their role or, the conversations that you guys take back home after this presentation are going to dictate who gets a license. But to answer the question itself, yes, it's capable of doing that. Teams Premium is a required add-in if you want that live functionality to be fully fleshed out. If you just want a transcription that's more generic, and then you can load that into Copilot and it'll give you next steps or action items or draft a follow-up email, you don't need the Teams premium piece for that. But if you want the live tracking that tells you exactly who said what, that's the Teams premium functionality that you can plug into Copilot.
Okay, thank you. Another good one just came in. What if you have security on the document at the document level by user? Will this prevent Copilot users from getting these documents?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely, and great question, because there's a couple different ways that you think about it from like an administrator perspective. Pared down access. Probably the easiest is just to start at the smallest grain of sand, if you will, and we don't have to dig out the whole beach, and that would be the document. So the document itself, if that's protected, that's going to supersede anything else. We can even get more granular if you want to get into like security groups and limiting access to certain SharePoint sites or document libraries based on your role. And so that's another way that you could take it one step further. But yeah, if you had a specific user only, like I guess the example there would be it's saved in somebody's OneDrive, so it's in their personal folder or their work folder for OneDrive, and they have a policy on there that unless I explicitly convert that to a shared file and give people access, which is how we have it set up here at PAX 8 as example, then nobody else can access it. And if they try to click on it, it's going to say request access. So that's like a real world example of how something like that would be applied.
What is Noah and Walker, what would you both say is like the best feature about Copilot? The feature that you're getting like the most usefulness from? I'm
Yeah,
sure it depends on the industry you're in, but for you two, what do you think is the best, most useful item out of Copilot?
sure. I'm happy to go first. My favorite part of Copilot is specifically Copilot Chat. I've referenced it a few times here, and I'm talking specifically about Copilot for Microsoft 365 Chat. Think think of Bing Chat, but the ability to reference files within the Dataverse stored inside of your company. Basically, I recently had a great example of kind of the executive assistant viewpoint where I had sent out a survey to a large list of people, and I needed to know who had not yet answered that survey. And so usually the process for that would be, well, I have to get the list of people who did, and then I have to have a list of all users, and then I have to manually go through and remove, one by one each person. But what I was able to do is I was able to give the list of all people to Copilot Chat and the list of people who had answered, and Copilot was then able to tell me who was present in one list and not in the other. And then even beyond that, I needed to email the people who had not yet answered. And so I asked Copilot, I said, hey, in this list, I need you to put that in first initial, last name at netgainit.com format. And then it was able to spit out a list of emails that I then just copy and pasted into Outlook, and I had my list just like that. So a task that was probably going to take me 20 minutes, and even worse, I was probably going to say, I'll get to that later. That's kind of busy work. I was able to complete within less than 5 minutes and get it done with.
It's great to have like a tool that instead of putting off the work that's going to take you a while, like to just get it done. I think that's really
Exactly.
cool. Walker, what do you think?
Yeah, I would say that. So Microsoft product specialist is kind of my day to day. So it's a lot of fact finding, comparing information, seeing what's changed, what's updated. So I really enjoy using the Copilot chat feature to compare different products, to look for industry updates. And you could be very generic with that. Like if I get a question from somebody that's, hey, do we have any anticipated price changes on Microsoft products coming up in 2024? That's a pretty generic question, and typically in my day-to-day operations, what I would have to do is look at our documentation, and then I would have to get in there and start searching Microsoft KB articles and try to find any announcements around Partner Center, marketplace updates, look at the global one, look at the North America one. Sometimes things hit EMEA before they come over to the US. And then after, 20, 30 minutes of fact finding, I'm ready now to fire back a response. I've been using Copilot to just find that information for me, and then I go and parse through the articles myself, or I can even ask it to summarize any changes that are upcoming. And so for me, generically, I would say efficiency is the thing that I like the most about it. And more specifically, you can use it to compare, find information, and then generate responses back to people. Noah's example of email lists is also very helpful. If I want to write back and say I need to CC all the people that have been on this email thread into a fresh email, for example, that's not even necessarily that labor intensive. That's just like hovering over the username, copying the email address, having another new draft email ready to go, pasting that in there, dot, 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 dot. You just do that over and over again. If you've got 25 people CC'd on an email, for example, that's going to take a minute. But with the Copilot product, you can just have it say, all right, these are the people that were listed, draft me a new email, put them all on there, and then put them in the CC category. It'll just do that for you. And so, yeah, I would say it's a very big and strong efficiency play.
Noah, another question I think that you could probably answer. Is there a version for SQL script creation and modification in SQL Server Management Studio?
Yeah, so Microsoft is building integrations for all kinds of, their applications. One that we didn't get to today was there is Copilot for Power BI. Copilot is able to interpret Power BI data sets and help make sense of a lot of charts and graphs and all that. Um, I'm not a SQL guy. I'm by no means an expert, but I can hopefully help you one way, and I'll share my screen real quick. A little live demo is, and I'm not even going to be able to create a prompt to maybe answer your specific question. But if you can word what you're looking for example, so I ask Copilot all the time for you sysadmins out there. I ask Copilot all the time for help with PowerShell scripts. So, for example, I'm going to ask Copilot, create a PowerShell script that gets, let's say, the last 10 users signed into um, a domain controller. And I'm just going to hit enter. And it's actually going to, again, like Walker mentioned earlier, go out to the internet and find maybe ways that people have accomplished this, or maybe just look into Microsoft Learn documentation for PowerShell and actually create a script that does exactly what it is that I've asked it that I need it to do. So if what you're hoping to achieve with, say, your SQL script can be put into words, there's a great chance that Copilot is capable of assisting with that as well.
Yes, and there's also a GitHub integration as well. So it can pull formulas from there or scripts, and then you can also, as a developer, run it within that GitHub interface. If you guys don't know what GitHub is, it's a file repository for scripts mostly.
I am putting in the chat for everyone to see that Copilot resources page that we've compiled. We are constantly adding new content to that page. So look at it, check back another time. This was an exciting webinar and we're close to time. So I think we have time to answer one more. This is a small one. It was, do the documents have to be in SharePoint / OneDrive, or can they be in other locations?
Yeah, no, they do. They do. They have to be saved, and they have to be saved into something that's on the Dataverse. And so OneDrive SharePoint would qualify. And the reason for that is you think about Copilot, it's not the same as like a typical agent that would sit on top of a device or like a NAS or something like that, right? Where it looks at all the information in, generates that, manipulates it, and spits it back out. The Copilot product is a very lightweight from the end user perspective, but it has quite a bit of architecture set up on the back end that is dependent on that data being in a place where it can be accessed. And so in this case, Microsoft has to be able to access the files and the documents. They need to be saved somewhere that Microsoft has access to, which is going to be on the Dataverse. So OneDrive, SharePoint.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fabulous. Well, I think that is our time. If we didn't get around to answering your questions, we had a ton of questions come in. We will answer those and we will post them on this Copilot resources page. There's a link in the chat for you there. If you would like for us to reach out to you, there is a place on that Copilot resources page where you can submit a form and we will reach out to you there. But anyway, Walker, Noah, thank you. I think this was a really great exercise and a good use of time.
An absolute pleasure. Thanks for having me back.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good day.
Bye. Thanks.